So listen to this. The 6th generation Corvette, which ran from 2005 to 2013, was one amazing car. But it could be better. What came after the C6 Corvette? Well, 6, 7, the 7th generation Corvette. The 7th generation Corvette took the amazing 6th generation Corvette, especially at the end of its run. 2010 to 2013, that run of the 6th generation Corvette was really good. They dialed it in. Generation Corvette, the best one in my opinion is the Corvette Z01. They took everything that they knew, GM, about making a car fast and dialed it up to 11 with that car. 638 horsepower at a 6.2 liter supercharged V8. You also got big 6-piston carbon ceramic brakes with the ZR1, a manual transmission, and magnetic ride control. GM was like, let's take all that good stuff that we learned and all that technology and plop it into the 7th generation Corvette. Also, let's listen to consumers, see what they're complaining about, and perfect it. What were consumers complaining about? Well, they hated the seats. So, 7th generation Corvette made better seats, seats that hugged you better, seats that were more comfortable. The interior was a better quality. You got leather interior, you got a digital gauge cluster. It was an interior that you expected out of a car that would cost you north of $80,000. Also, consumers didn't like the generic parts that were being used on the Corvette that were very obvious, such as the steering wheel. Steering wheel on the 6th generation Corvette was out of a Chevy Cobalt. Nobody liked that. They wanted to feel special. They were driving a Corvette. So, 7th generation Corvette changed that. Made a cool looking steering wheel, unique for the Corvette. In addition, a lot of guys that, were driving German cars, especially, the reviewers that drove Porsches and compared everything to a Porsche. You can't do that, guys. But GM was listening. They said, you know what? Let's make it a little bit more agile. Let's give that Corvette a little bit more of a Porsche feel. It wasn't exactly like a Porsche, but it gave it more of a Porsche feel. What a cool car. They did it. It was more nimble, more agile. Weighs about a little under 3,400 pounds, which isn't exceptional light, but it's light enough because it had a LT1 V8 that put out 460 horsepower. Stock. Weight distribution was good on a Corvette too. It's always been good, especially once they started mounting the transmission in the rear of those cars. Gave it a good weight distribution. Big tires helped too. 285s in the back. Also got 4-piston Brembo brakes standard. In the 6th generation Corvette, you only got 2 pistons, which were good. Gotta remember, again, light car. You don't really need a lot of stopping power, but when you got more power, you do want the stopping power. In addition, they brought back that nameplate, the Stingray, which is cool. If you sit in a 7th generation Corvette, the hood does this. It looks amazing. It gives you the feeling you're in something special. And again, Corvettes sound amazing too, thanks to equal length exhaust. 4 tailpipes as well. They're trumpets. They sound great, even with a stock exhaust. You upgrade the exhaust to a Corsa or a Borla. Amazing. You could also get a Z51 performance package, which gave you a better suspension, dry sump, oil pump, a little bit more performance. But it was 2015, 1 year after they introduced the 7th generation Corvette, that there was a significant change. And that was thanks to the Z06. The Z06 was powered by an LT4 V8 that put out 650 horsepower. Like I said, the outgoing ZR1, which is supposed to be the top dog Corvette, only had 638 horsepower, making the Z06 the one step down from the ZR1, even faster than the outgoing ZR1 Corvette. Wild. Z06 also got mag ride standard. You got bigger tires, 335s in the rear. Those are massive because 650 bald eagles is no joke out of a car that barely weighs anything. This is insane. This is more power than you need for the streets, but you want that power that burns a hole through the earth. It's crazy. It's wild. You know that you could take on almost anything on the streets with a 7th generation Corvette Z06. Like any LS derived engine, LT1, LT4, you can make power pretty easy, especially with an LT4. Just put a smaller pulley on, long tube headers, dyno tune. I mean, that thing's making north of 750 horsepower. Easy. I mean, you change the supercharger to a bigger one, you can easily get 1,000 horsepower. These cars are just wild machines. What boggles my mind all the time is that Chevrolet offered these cars in convertibles. A Z06 convertible. Imagine just driving with the top down with 650 horsepower under your right foot. Oh my goodness. Holy smokes. You're gonna scare the crap out of your passenger, but that's the fun of it. Just imagine taking a passenger, dropping down the second gear, and then hitting 200 miles per hour. You'll scare the crap out of your passenger. This is a wild machine. Who needs roller coasters when you have a Corvette Z06? Now, these cars were offered in an automatic transmission, 8-speed automatic transmission, in fact. With the amount of horsepower, an automatic transmission is nice, especially maybe if you're into cruising instead of, rolling through your gears. You don't want to be bothered with shifting gears, but that's the fun of it. Now, the 8th generation Corvette, I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, wasn't offered in a manual transmission. I think that's disappointing, and that's where the 7th generation got it right. They offered the manual transmission, which is enthusiastic, and car people around the world appreciate that manual transmission and that third pedal. Now let's skip ahead. 2018. What was Chevrolet doing in 2018 with the Corvette? Well, they were thinking, what can we do with the ZR1? Well, they decided to stuff a bigger supercharged 6.2 liter V8, calling it the LT5, putting out 755 horsepower. This is an insane machine. Right down to the big carbon ceramic brakes, the ability to get a manual transmission with 755 horsepower, rear wheel drive. It was next level. It might have been too next level for some people. For example, a little story which happened in the 2018 Detroit Grand Prix, where a GM exec was driving a Corvette ZR1 pace car, and it might have, gave it a little too much gas around the corner and spun out and crashed it. It was a sad day for the ZR1, but it makes a good story. Corvette ZR1 broke lap records around the world. For example, Willow Springs, it did it in 1 minute, 23.7 seconds, which is very fast around Willow Springs. Very few cars were faster than the Corvette ZR1. In fact, usually those cars that were faster were double the price. When you're talking about a track weapon like the C7 ZR1, you have to mention the notorious Nürburgring. Good time around the Nürburgring is sub 7 minutes. The Corvette ZR1 was said to put out a sub 7 minute time. However, when it did an unofficial lap around the Nürburgring, it did it in 7 minutes and 4 seconds. But that was because the ZR1 had cold tires. And everyone knows that the coefficient of friction on cold tires is less than warm tires. That's why, when you're drag racing, you're going to warm those tires up. You want more friction. You want more traction. Cold tires don't get that. Though it was disappointing, all car people around the world know the capabilities of the C7 ZR1. In fact, they didn't care that it did an unofficial lap time around the Nürburgring in 7 minutes 4 seconds. They know that that car can go faster in the right hands, but they looked at that car and said, this is one cool automobile, and the C8 Corvette is the only Corvette that can surpass that. The only way to make this Corvette better was to make it a mid-engine car. As I mentioned, the successor to the 7th generation Corvette after 2019 was the 2020 C8 Corvette that had a base engine of an LT2 V8 that had 490 horsepower, put the power down a little bit better thanks to the mid-engine that the Corvette now has. It's one good car, definitely is. But like I said, it's missing the spirit of the Corvette, that manual transmission. You know what? I think GM were looking at a numbers game and they saw that more people bought the automatic over the manual. It's sad because that manual transmission was spirited. But the C8 Corvette is still a good car. And that's everything I have to say about the 7th generation Corvette. This is one amazing automobile that General Motors made and stands the test of time. It was so good that the only way to make the Corvette better was to make it mid-engine. The C8 Corvette took the technology and lessons learned from the 7th generation Corvette and just dialed it up a little bit. They made it a little bit better to compete now in the hypercar or supercar world today. Enjoyed this video? Check out my last video I made on the 6th generation Corvette. Links in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy and bye all.